a 15-year-old teenager, 2 boys from the inner city, and a 63-year-old female exec with post-traumatic stress. What do they all have in common? Horses. Their connection to horses. These animals have been in our lives since the dawn of time. Their strength, their power, their energy is so magnificent. I'm hardwired. When I see a picture like that, I almost am brought to stillness. They're so beautiful. But is there something else about these animals that's really pivotal for our lives today? I think so. I know so. Researchers have said 80% of our learning is nonverbal. That's a pretty high percentage. And if that's the case, there has to be some way that we can facilitate that or learn about that in our lives. Horses are the answer. Horses are masters of non-predatory power. What that means is they don't have big claws and sharp teeth, but they're very powerful. They handle their power in ways that are not predatory. A lot of it has to do with their anatomy. Horses have eyes on the side of their head, and that affords them a wide range of vision with which to see. They see things very close. They see things afar off. They actually see everything except for what's right behind them, almost 360 degrees. And that's how they live, a very satiated, curious state, very open. Works well for them, unless there's something either far off or close up that threatens that, an object or something or someone that could possibly, in their mind, be a predator. And in an instant, they go from that wide open range, wide angle living, to a narrow, tiny frame where they focus, they hyper-focus on that object because they have to know, do I have to flee? Their heart rate rises, their blood pressure rises, adrenaline flows through their system because they have to know in an instant, do I run? Not only that, here's where the 80% nonverbal comes in. They have to be able to let their herd mates know with the flick of an ear, the blink of an eye, or the swish of a tail, and they're gone. Now that narrow, tiny frame, we're not meant to live like that. They aren't meant to live like that 24/7. That's only meant for a short period if your life is in danger. I was talking to a girlfriend and I was explaining to her the wide angle and the narrow angle with horses, and she stopped me and she said, Mindy, I live my life like that. I said, I know. You're not the only one. We are so assaulted by stressors outside us and inside us so much in today's world that sometimes we can't see that wide angle as well. We're stuck in that narrow frame. We're always under stress. It affects us physically. It affects us emotionally. Is there a way out? If we can follow the wisdom of the horse, there is a way out. The way they live their lives can be a model for us. This is how horses live. They notice, they feel, they respond or react, and then they go back to a satiated state. They go back to contentment, they go back to grazing. Are we able to notice? In our lives, are we able to slow down and pause and be still long enough so that we can become awake and aware. Imperative that we stop and slow down. You might call it prayer. You might call it meditation. You might call it spiritual direction. Whatever you call it, we need to do it in our lives. Do we feel? Some of us might feel too much. Some of us might not feel enough. Some of us don't know what we're feeling. Do we respond or react? Do we know that we have choices? Some of us react and just stay attached to the drama. Some of us are paralyzed. We feel like we can't move. We have choices we can make. And finally, do we go back to that open, satiated state where we're content? Horses are like tuning forks. You have two tuning forks, and you strike one, and the other resonates with the same sound, frequency, and vibration. That's what horses do, only instead of tuning forks, it's hearts, and their heart to our heart, and our heart to their heart. And whether you are around horses a lot, or maybe you're afraid of horses, as long as you're open and curious, they can touch your heart. I had an experience a short while ago where I was in a lot of discomfort, emotional pain, physical pain, and it went on for a while. And even though I was in that state, every day I had to get up, tend to the horses, take care of them. And while my suffering was going on, in the midst of all that, it's like the horses were silent sentries to my suffering. They just stood by and were very still. But they really weren't silent, because they're always in a place of openness and acceptance. Their backs are broad. They carry us beautifully. They carry things. They hold things. And gradually, I was able to open up to more acceptance and more letting go. And what became a wound eventually became a window. And the things about windows is we look out from them, and we can see, and we can notice, and we can become aware. That's the gift, the wisdom of the horses. I had a woman come out to the farm, and I put the horse up on cross ties. And I said to her, I want you to walk from the horse's head and then just walk towards his hind end. And as you do that, I want you to focus on what you think the horse might be feeling. And so she did that, and she started at the head, and she walked, and she got behind him. She passed behind him at a real safe distance, and then she came up to the other side. And I said, now, I want you to focus on what it is that you're feeling in this moment. And she did that, and I'm just observing. The horse is standing perfectly still. He never moved. But he turned his head and his neck, and as she walked forward, he tracked her with his eyes and his head. Now remember, he could see her perfectly fine. We already talked about that. But in that moment, with her walking around and towards him, there was something about her that he was drawn to. He wanted to see her. He wanted to notice her more. And I'm watching this and I'm thinking, oh my, 1,200 pounds. Just noticed this woman. 1,200 pounds just saw this woman. Some people spend their whole lives not being noticed or not being seen. So the exercise was over, and I said, how was it for you? She said, oh, it was so profound. I said, tell me. She said, when I first started walking, I was aware that I don't even know what I'm feeling a lot. And then I thought, the times that I do, I think I overreact. And then the second part, he's so powerful And he's so strong, but he's so kind and gentle. I felt soothed. And I thought, that is beautiful. How many of us in our days feel soothed? That was one horse, one exercise, two people with different lenses on life. And in a very short amount of time, that horse spoke very deeply to both of us. This is how horses heal and how they transform. And whether you are a teenager, whether you're two children from the inner city, whether you're an executive, the wisdom of the horse can speak to that. When you can be present to your body in the moment, to what you're feeling, and when your heart can be open, filled with gratitude. The wonderful thing about gratitude is the more grateful you are, the more grateful you become. And when your mind is in a place of curiosity, compassion, and non-judgment, that's a beautiful way to live, with your mind and your heart and your body all in sync. Because you can learn every life lesson in the barn. Loss, love, grief, letting go, surrender, attachment, non-attachment, love, gratitude, awe, can all be learned in the barn. And when you allow the wisdom of the horse to really impact your life, impossible things can happen. I know this to be true. You might think that it's impossible to get a horse to sit. People sit. Dogs sit. Yet, you can teach a horse to sit on a beanbag chair. Dreams can happen when you're following the wisdom of the horse and letting them heal and transform and empower. You can take an 11-year-old girl from the northwest side of Chicago with cat-eye glasses who loves her pony very, very much. And she just might give a talk at TEDxWilmington. God bless.